Okay, class. Today's lecture is going to be on the shorter side. And today we flip the script in staffing, where we go from you being the person doing the staffing to you being the person being staffed. Yeah? How do you manage your career over the longer term? Hopefully by now there should be things that you've picked up in this unit that will be helpful to you also as someone, say, looking for work, yeah? Like when you're being interviewed, you know now to use the STAR technique: situation, task, action, response. You can even add reflection to that. That's also handy for crafting selection criteria using that rubric. So there should be a couple things that you've picked up that you can use use on the other side of the fence. Here we cover I guess thinking more broadly about your careers. And generally, the thing with careers is there's only so much planning you can do. There's what you plan and hope will happen, and then there's what will actually happen. So for example, my very first job out of uni had nothing to do with business or HR. I was working in a mouse research lab injecting mice with chemicals to destroy their pancreases and then test potential cures for diabetes. Yeah, and now I'm here. Yeah, these paths are circuitous, and there is an element of making choices, but also just happenstance and just trying to find the match between what the world needs and what you have to offer. Yeah, so a career, broadly speaking, is different from a job in that your career is your sequence of jobs. It is going from job to job, one after the other, within a given job family. So the job family of, say, HR workers, in most likely your case. And careers can change, yeah, so you can work within a certain job family now and then change what you decide to do later on. I think the most common case of this, for example, in the US, is like ex-military people who do their tours of service and then leave the military and then go start a career doing something else. Law enforcement, consulting, etc. Yeah, so it's totally normal for careers to change. You're not stuck in the career you're pursuing for the long haul. And this stuff is important because careers last longer than before because of the aging workforce. So people are, as you know, delaying retirement, in some cases because they can't afford to retire. In some cases, it's because their identities are so invested in their work that they just go crazy when they have nothing to do, and so they find their way back into employment in some capacity, what they call bridge employment, yeah? Where you've kind of got one foot in retirement and one foot in your profession still. So because of this, careers are fairly long-lasting. So this is going to be something that's going to follow you for a long time. Actually, before we go forward, I forgot to mention something, which is, I hope you're aware, there is a quiz this week, yeah? So Lms Quiz, it's up on LMS, 15 items, multiple choice, pretty much the same thing you did the last time. It runs from week 7, which is, whatchamacallit? Simulations, thank you. From simulations until selection and context, which is last week. So this is not included in the LMS quiz. Some bits of this will be included in the final exam, and just to make your revision easier, I will tell you, it's the bit in this lecture that has overlap with the tutorial. Yeah? So if you want to know what here will be covered in the final exam, it's the bit that has overlap with the tutorial. And the tutorial for this week is on career-based networking. So we want to make this as practical for you as possible. Yeah? Like not just the theories on career development, but like, frankly, I think people underestimate, when they haven't had too many jobs yet, just how important networking is for getting that series of jobs. It's played a major role in my own career development too, where my first bunch of jobs were really through networks. In fact, my first maybe 2-3 research jobs I got from smoking. Like I used to hang out with like smoking buddies in the uni I used to be at, and then smoking buddies would say, well, we need a research assistant, let's get this guy. Yeah, and we're friends, we smoke together. Things like this can have surprising consequences, unexpected consequences. So the tutorial this week covers the networking side of things to help you get started thinking about networking for your careers, and we'll cover that in today's lecture too. So how do you know you've had a good career? What is the yardstick by which we measure career success? So there is, on the one hand, objective career success. So objective career success is you want to go up vertically. You want to get promoted. You want to make good money. You want to have a job that is prestigious. Yeah? And then on sort of the other hand, kind of parallel to this but not the same, is simply, are you satisfied with your career? Are you happy with where you are? And are you happy with your trajectory? Now, objective career success does correlate with subjective career success. So what that means is people who are rising up the ranks tend to be happier with where they are, but it's not a perfect correlation. There are, as you can imagine, I'm sure, people who have gotten all the promotions they want but are deeply dissatisfied with their careers. And vice versa. People who are not rising in any objective sense of the word, but are happy with where they are and happy with where they're going. And so which should you choose? Which should you prioritize? This is very purely idiosyncratic. It does come down to your values. Now, if you decide that you want to prioritize subjective career success, then you would be pursuing what is called a protean career. Yeah? So, let's make one distinction clear now. So, if we think about careers at the, say, careers approximately a century ago, yeah? You'd have your traditional career, you rise up the ranks, generally only within one career, often only within one firm. You're just within one organization going up, 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 bit by bit, and then you kind of go as high as you feel like going or are capable of going, and then that's that, yeah? And then on the other hand, there's the protean career where you're often hopping from job to job. You are crafting the whole thing, not really making decisions based on what makes you promotable, but just what makes you happy, what makes you satisfied, what gives you purpose. Yeah, and so if you are making career choices based on what feels like, oh, this will satisfy me, then you are opting for a protean career. And in this day and age, more and more people are opting for that protean career. So with protean careers, the key is that you get to decide how your career unfolds. Not your parents, not your employers, not the government, which can seem strange here in Australia, but there are countries in the world where the government decides what you do. Yeah? Or to some extent, where they kind of say, well, you go in the engineering track and so on. I have a buddy from Iraq who I came as a complete shock to me. He was pushed into engineering because he took an exam, and the exam said, oh, well, you're going to be an engineer now. And that's just what happened. So to the extent that the unfolding of your career is within your control, to the extent that you get to be the author of your career, you have a protean career. And people with protean careers are often more satisfied, they have more career success, objective and subjective, and so on. Then there is the boundaryless career, which is kind of in the same vein, but the premise is that your careers are not limited to the firm you choose to work at. So, first job out of uni ends up being, say, Ernst & Young, doesn't mean you stay there your whole career. Yeah? You end up moving from job to job fairly often. And not just within the same city, not just within the same country. The boundaries sort of dissipate and disperse. And this is what careers tend to look like these days, as you probably well know. So, how do you manage these transitions and occupational challenges? Before we get to career choice, I'd like you to hop onto LMS, and you should see something called a Career Adaptabilities Scale. Fill out that questionnaire and see how you go. There should be a 24-item questionnaire on LMS. So those of you viewing this later can also access this. It's on LMS. The Career Adaptability Scale. 24 items. Fill it up now and see how you go. So I study, among other things, career adaptability. It's the basic individual capacity to manage career transitions, which many of you are going to be facing very soon, the school-to-work transition. So these are the skills you need to manage career transitions and occupational challenges. Once you have finished the questionnaire, you can begin scoring. If you get the average of questions 1 to 6, that would be your career concern. Average of 7 to 12, career control, and so on. And we have here some norms, so you can see how you compare to the average. I think in about 3 decades of research on careers, career adaptability has proven to be one of the strongest predictors of just about every career outcome we care about. Objective career success, subjective career success. I have research showing it links to performance, it links to persistence, so who drops out of, say, STEM careers, people with career adaptability less likely to drop out. It is a very handy set of skills to have for just about every occupational issue, challenge, transition that there is. So once you've got your averages together, take note of which you need to work on. So career concern is simply asking the question, are you thinking about what your career is going to be? Are you exploring your options, or are you kind of just in denial or not really thinking about it, just sort of blocking it from your mind because perhaps you don't feel ready yet, you'd rather not think about it, maybe there are obstacles in your path that feel difficult to handle. in which case you may not be sufficiently concerned or sufficiently outwardly facing to kind of see where you want your career to be going. Then there's control. Does your career feel like it is in your control, or does it feel like it is way beyond your control, that you don't have things in check? Then there's career curiosity. Are you curious about what the options are? Also related to exploration. Are you exploring the possibilities before you? And then there's career confidence, which is simply, do you have the self-efficacy? Do you have the can-do spirit, so to speak, to get things done for your career? Now, if you feel like you are lacking in some or any of these, the advice very simply is to look into career counseling. There are lots of things you can do, and this stuff does grow over time ever so slightly. So the evidence is that career adaptability grows somewhat with age, not very much, a little bit. But I think career counseling will help you unpack a lot of this. You would be surprised how I guess psychodynamic is the word that comes to mind. How surprisingly a lot of the obstacles between us and being more, say, career adaptable or being able to pursue our careers the right way really comes down to how we see ourselves and how we see the world. Yeah, so this comes to career choice. So how do we choose our first careers, and how do we pursue these careers? According to career construction theory, the way we author our careers is based on how we see ourselves. Now, this can be good or bad news. If you think highly of yourself, you will set higher career goals, and you'll pursue your careers with more. You'll pursue them more strongly. Yeah. Whereas if you don't have a very high view of yourself, you may not pursue your goals as strongly, so to speak. Yeah, so how you see yourself ends up shaping the career you end up pursuing. And so this can be problematic if you don't think very highly of yourself, or just think, well, this thing I want to pursue isn't really for me, for whatever reason, which may or may not be true. Yeah, so this is coming from the career counseling point of view, where one of the big perspectives is looking at narrative. So what is the story that you tell yourself about what you want to do and why you're doing it? And that story shapes what you end up doing. The careers you end up pursuing are driven by these narratives that you have of yourself and of the world. And if that narrative feels painful to think about, if it feels toxic, you probably want to get counseling for it. Yeah? And then there is the more, I guess, quantitative view, which is based on your interests. So there's the RIASEC inventory, which is used to map out your career interests, broadly speaking. And then, of course, there's happenstance, random chance. Who do you get to interact with? Are you at the right place at the right time? For all the planning that you can put into careers, there is genuinely an element of just sheer luck that ends up shaping a lot of our paths, and that's okay. Planning is good, but you kind of have to just let life happen. Let's talk about the RIASEC. Yeah, so here we have your career interests. Now, I didn't send you a RIASEC inventory because the best one you can take is the one on ONET. So we've been covering ONET from week 2. If you hop on ONET, there should be a career interests inventory that you can take later on. And this inventory basically identifies which career interests, what are your interests, broadly speaking, in terms of careers. And there are 6 kinds: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Yeah, and just about every job maps onto about 2 to 3 of these career interests. So once you have a sense of what your interests are, your sort of 2 to 3 main interests, that does map onto a couple of jobs as well. So first you have realistic. So people with realistic interests are people who want to do practical things. Yeah, they are motivated by the potential to do hands-on work. Yeah? So being outdoors, building, repairing, working with your hands. Yeah? So you see this, for example, in professions like cooks, barbers, surgeons, mechanics, pilots, anything that involves working with your hands, anything that is as practical and real-world as possible, aligns with people who have realistic interests. I think there was a study showing that people whose jobs align with their career interests ended up being not just more happy, but making more money. So you do want to end up in a job that aligns with your interests. Then there's investigative. Yeah, so people with investigative interests are, this is basically people who are in it for the life of the mind, where it's all about thinking, playing with concepts, lots of math, among other things. So you see this among, say, lab technicians, coders, many engineers, analysts, people who work in finance. So these occupations align with investigative interests. Then there are artistic interests, which are not necessarily about performing art per se, because I think we all have a view of art that might be a bit more, I guess, more so if you'll notice that in the jobs under artistic occupations, they aren't all people who make art, but they are people who are self-expressing in some way without necessarily following a clear set of rules. So if you have artistic interests, this means you would prefer a job where there are not clear guidelines for what you ought to do necessarily, but there is space for you to express your ideas, your thinking, yourself. Yeah, so among other things, you see this among musicians, photographers, technical writers, social scientists. Then there are social jobs. So this is fairly easy. This is for people who want to be interacting with others for a living. Yeah, often in the interest of helping them, because you're paid for helping people. So you see this in, for example, service workers, nurses, personal trainers, social workers, so on. Then there are enterprising jobs. So these are jobs that are either explicitly entrepreneurial or kind of entrepreneur adjacent. Yeah, where the interest is in jobs where you get to take risks, lead, very high extroversion, very high energy. So you see this, for example, in sales, bartenders, entrepreneurs, curators, managers. So most managers tend to, or rather people with enterprising interests tend to do better as managers and also more likely to be lawyers. Yeah, so jobs that are entrepreneurial explicitly or entrepreneurship adjacent, where there's an element of interacting with clients, persuading them, and so on. Then there are conventional interests. So this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's simply that people with conventional interests like to follow rules and guidelines, which is a good thing, especially if you've been following so far in staffing. The best staffing protocol is going to be one that is data-driven and conventional rather than fly by the seat of your pants and I'm going to self-express the interview questions I'm going to ask. So being conventional is highly underrated, highly, highly underrated. But so the people the occupations that suit conventional interests are, among other things, clerks, accountants, auditors, economists. Basically, the clearer the guidelines, the more these people thrive. Yeah, so you can take an inventory testing this on ONET. I think it's the ONET Interest Profiler, and then it'll match you to jobs that fit with your interest profile. Because all of these jobs, it's not like, for example, economists, the career of being an economist is only conventional. Yeah, all of these jobs are combinations of multiple interests. And so an ideal job for you would be one that aligns with your interests. Another thing to consider is your career anchors. Now, I don't have a questionnaire on this for you because it is a paid questionnaire. Unfortunately, I think there are free questionnaires, but yeah, of dubious quality. So you can get a paid questionnaire on your career anchors, which is basically what are the things you care about, not interests per se, but what are the things that matter to you. So we may not have the questionnaire, but you can think about this for yourself. So when you choose a career, is your priority to have a career that supports your lifestyle? Yeah, where the key is to have flexibility and balance, where you can do the things you really want to do, and the career is just there to kind of keep everything else afloat. That's lifestyle. Then you have pure challenge, where you pursue a career in the interest of working on very hard, wicked problems. So careers often in science are pure challenge careers. Then there is service or dedication to a cause, where you have a cause that you care about, you have a sort of a mission or a calling that drives you to, that drives the way you live your life. And so there are, of course, certain jobs in, for example, nonprofits that suit this career anchor. Then there's entrepreneurial creativity. Do you want to take risks, do your own thing, be creative? Then there is security and stability. To what extent do you want a job that is stable? Yeah, you'll notice it's impossible to get a job that ticks all of these boxes. You will have to choose which of these matter most to you. So, for example, jobs that are high on entrepreneurial creativity will not be the same as the ones that load on security and stability. Yeah, so there's an element of picking and choosing. There are trade-offs here. Then there's autonomy and independence. To what extent do you want the freedom to do your own thing versus having fairly rigid work structures, yeah, which many jobs do have fairly rigid work structures, and yet can still offer many of these other things as well. Then there's managerial roles, where you are responsible for other people. Some people like that, some don't. And then there is technical functional. Are you applying skills in a technical area, kind of aligned with the investigative interests? Yeah, so these career anchors are similar to the interests. The main difference is that these are sort of elements of the career that are, it's not so much that you find this interesting or not, but this suits what you want to be doing with your life. Yeah? So feel free to take a look at this slide in your own time and work out, or you can pay for a career anchors testing session and assess which of these aligns well with you, and does this match up with the career you want to pursue? And so choosing a career ostensibly is a matter of finding your passion and then pursuing it. That is the claim that has been in the literature for a while. Now, over the past decade or so, there's been research showing that this is not quite right. That people who come to careers with the sense that, oh, I need to find the thing that I'm passionate about and then I need to pursue it, tend to be more dissatisfied and tend to kind of get more lost. So what the literature seems to be suggesting is that people become passionate about their careers, or it's not that the passion comes first, it's that people find careers that kind of fit, and then they put effort into their careers, they build confidence, and then that's where the passion comes from. The causality is reversed. It is the effort and the confidence that builds the passion, not necessarily the other way around. Or rather, it can go both ways. So if you know in your heart of hearts, you've got your North Star of what you want to do, great. But if you don't, that is okay. It is okay to explore and try things. And then as you sort of try these things, build that confidence, get some experience, put in the work, that alone can make the passion manifest. And so it can be very counterproductive to kind of come into a career and say, well, okay, I've been in this job for a month. Is this right for me? No, it doesn't feel right. I'm not going to do this. Yeah, making that decision super early within a month. you need to give it time. Yeah, there needs to be some time for you to build confidence and to put in the effort before you can really get a sense of the fit for you. So, which careers do people explore? This is an important question because of adverse, it's not adverse impact per se, but there are diversity-related considerations in many careers. And I look at some of this in STEM, yeah? So we know there is a leaky pipeline in STEM where women, underrepresented minorities, LGBTQ folks, people with disabilities are more likely to drop out at all of the stages from, say, thinking, do I want to be a scientist when I grow up, to persisting through uni, where women are twice as likely to drop out of science degrees if they fail a calculus class, for example, all the way through like higher studies in science, getting their first science job, persisting through. People who are underprivileged in any number of ways are more likely to drop out and fall out of the pipeline, yeah? Now, there are any number of reasons this happens, and career exploration plays a big role. So first is the socialization process, yeah? So if I give you a sheet of paper and ask you, draw scientist, what would you draw? There's been research on this showing that many children shown a sheet of paper, draw scientist, will draw a dude, like an old white dude, yeah? There is a kind of stereotypical picture of what a scientist is. And so that image is also what comes up when you ask children to draw a leader. Draw a leader. They'll also draw that too. Now this is starting to change, yeah? I think they replicated that study like a year or two ago, and they're starting to see more like, draw a scientist and it's a woman. That's good, yeah? But the key here is, if your image of what a job is a sort of certain, like, monolithic view, and that's not you, that shapes what you decide to explore. Then you're not going to go down that road, because that's not me, yeah? It wouldn't feel right for me to give that a try. So there's the perceptions of the occupations. And then there's the understanding of yourself, yeah? So do you feel like you have the confidence to do the work that you want to do? And then there are perceptions of the future. Is there a pathway for me to be able to do this, or are there limitations because of, say, my health, or my obligations, or just other stuff around me that this is not something feasible? So how you work this out really varies from person to person. And if you would like to do more of this, again, career counseling. Recommend career counseling. So now we get to networking. Yeah? So networking is often seen as a dirty word. There is research on this that people kind of see networking as this very cold, very kind of utilitarian, like you're just using people. But in reality, class, networking is give and take. It is an exchange of resources. Yeah? So if you are networking with people who are vertically, or rather who have achieved more than you in their careers, who've been farther along, that's vertical networking. And this is for finding mentors. Now, I'm going to ask, and clap your hands if the answer is yes, do you have a mentor? Good. So if you have a mentor, that's good. If you don't have a mentor, you definitely want a mentor. There is a boatload of research showing that people with mentors have much more objective and subjective career success. They feel a lot less confused and lost and ambivalent about their careers. Frankly, everyone should have a mentor. And there is research showing that a lot of the diversity-related issues in many fields, especially in science, has to do with mentoring, and that it is harder for people who are underrepresented in some way because of gender, LGBT status, and so on. It is harder for these people to find mentors. Yeah, because people often, not always, but often want to mentor people like them. Now, this isn't necessarily true. This is often an assumption that people have, but it can kind of shape the mentoring process. Now, are you going to wait for the mentor to come to you? Be realistic. This does happen to some people, but what you do want to be doing is seeking out these mentors for yourself. So these are people with the careers that you want to have. Yeah? So look into vertical networking. Now, what people underestimate is horizontal networking. Networking for peers. Horizontal networks are super duper handy. Horizontal networks are how a lot of people get their first to maybe fifth jobs. You have a friend in the industry, or you have a friend who is also looking for work who says, hey, have you applied for this role? Or you have a friend who has a job somewhere and then they have you in mind to potentially poach you. Yeah? So horizontal networking is big. It is not something to be underestimated. And it is easier to do. Yeah? Because with vertical networking, there's always like this whole shyness, yeah, of approaching someone with status and stature. But with horizontal networking, it's like, look, we're in this together. Let's just regularly hang out, grab coffee, just be friends, right? It is a smaller ask. And it is fine to accumulate horizontal networks, and then that can also lead to more vertical networks as you go. Now, the key is, because networking is give and take, and because it can feel intimidating, remember that you have something to offer. Yeah? You are much more up to date on, for example, what is going on in HR than a lot of these people necessarily, because you are getting, state-of-the-art information and so on. That's one thing. Another is that in the case of vertical mentoring, people want to be mentors, believe it or not. These people with status and stature, they want to be mentors. They want to be helping others and taking care of others. It's something that people just like doing. Now, I don't know if this is something that is done at UWA, but in other schools, they have third years mentor first years, and it's beneficial for both parties. The first years really appreciate having a third year, help them out, and so on. And then the third years, they appreciate it too. They're much more likely to kind of stay and continue in that career path. Just because they kind of, it gives you another perspective on what you're doing, and it can provide a sense of purpose. Yeah, so you are bringing something to the table by asking for mentorship. It is completely fine, and these people will often want to just talk and tell you all these things about their careers and so on. And if you seem interested, they'll help you. So don't underestimate. Let me rephrase that. People significantly underestimate how likely others are to be willing to mentor them. I think socially speaking, people underestimate how willing other people are to interact. Like there was this study showing that people waiting at the bus stop, if you ask them how much would you enjoy chatting with the person next to you, would kind of give a lower rating than if you actually ask them to chat to the person next to them. They'd actually be like, oh, this is fun, this is good. Yeah, people underestimate how much these social interactions can be good for them. And the same applies to mentorship. We underestimate how much it can help us. And we underestimate how actually not that difficult it is to find a mentor. So, remember, you have something to offer. You have something to bring to the table. Even if it is just appreciation, respecting their status, giving them an opportunity to mentor, you have something to offer them. Yeah? And so here we get to the kind of the two sorts of networking that are mutually reinforcing. You want a good mix of the two. Expressive networking and instrumental networking. So this is covered in the tutorial. Yeah, so instrumental networking is networking for instrumental purposes to fulfill a goal. Where is there an opening in your organization? Can you help me with this major project? Do you have any career advice for me? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so the goal here is you need help with something and you're asking for it. Now this can be beneficial to the mentor because they get to sort of flex their muscles and show that I have all this experience with so-and-so and I can help you with this. But often these are people who are very, very busy. Yeah, and so they may not necessarily be able to help. Now, what makes instrumental networking more likely to work is if you have a good relationship to begin with. And that's where expressive networking comes in. So if you've got networks with peers or with mentors already, you're going to want to, once in a while, reach out to show gratitude and support. Now again, the research on this is pretty clear. People severely underestimate how good it feels to express gratitude, and they also underestimate how good it is for the other person to hear gratitude. Yeah, so if you ask people, how good is it going to feel to write a thank you note, or how good is the other person going to feel receiving a thank you note, they will give a lower rating than how you'd actually feel writing a thank you note and how the other person would actually feel. It's, I think, just it's, I think, inherent to the human condition. We don't appreciate how gratitude is the grease that keeps the wheels moving. Yeah? So showing gratitude, showing support, sending a congratulatory note to your mentor, completely fine. And these are good things. These keep relationships alive. So what you need to make networking work is some mix of instrumental networking and expressive networking. That way you've got give and take. You are giving stuff that people want. You're giving them support. You're reinforcing their status and their stature. And you're making them feel good. Yeah? And what you're getting in return is often help or simply just that connection that could come in handy in unexpected ways as you proceed. I think with this whole career development lecture, the best advice I can give, which is reinforced in the tutorial, is network. Network. This will get you jobs. This will get your career rolling. And ultimately, it is truly give and take. It is not just for you. Everyone wins when you network. Everyone wins. And that is actually all I have for this lecture on career management. It is a fairly interesting space. I think we know a lot less about careers than we don't know very much about it, and so a lot more research is needed. I work in this space myself, and there is definitely a lot more we need to learn. Any questions? Yeah, go.
I was just wondering about how career management would change in areas that are more casualized, like the gig economy.
Yeah, great question. I should have seen this coming. I should have seen this coming. So there is a kind of new concept in this literature called the sustainable career, which revolves around the notion of decent work. Which is which is rather than asking, am I promotable? Am I rising up the ranks? Or am I happy? It is sad to say in this, late stage capitalist world, the question is simply, is my work decent? Is this work with dignity? And in the gig economy, that is a question where the answer is often no, where there is not as much dignity in the work they do because there's so little job security, because occupational prestige is so low, because it's often dirty work, like we described last week. So there are more questions than answers in that space. So I can tell you that people are thinking about this. It's called sustainable careers. Is this work sustainable, something that I can pursue for the long haul, and is there dignity in the work? Is it quote-unquote decent work? And More questions than answers. We're still working out what exactly it is that people assess when they decide if this work is decent or not, whether or not this work is sustainable. But yeah, as far as the gig economy goes, typically it isn't, and I'm sure you know this. If you chat with people who are in the gig economy, they have this is their side gig, and then they have their main sort of career, which ends up being, among other things, on hold, which is an unexplored domain. We know very little about that. How do they manage? It's not truly a dual career. It's more of my true career is on hold, and I'm doing this to tide me over. Yeah, lots of open questions. Anything else broadly about the class, final exam? If not, then we're good to go, class.